Hello everyone and welcome to Season 7, Episode 42 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in CHIKARA history with match number 9 on our list, which is the Trios match between the Kings of Wrestling trio of Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli, and Arik and the team of Mike Quackenbush, Jigsaw, and Sabian from the CHIKARA Remain in Light event held on March the 18th of 2005. I promise this is the last Kings of Wrestling, trios or Atomico match on the countdown, and it is by far my absolute favorite. This is a match that for 5+ years I considered to be my favorite match in CHIKARA history from the time it happened up until another match unseated it, which will end up being number 1 on this countdown, so be on the lookout for that. But this match is low-key one of the most important matches in CHIKARA history. And it's one that I think, is lost, in the grand scheme of things overall. But this was the main event of the first show post Tag World Grand Prix 2005. And I've talked about the history of CHIKARA, throughout this season. You had a promotion that started out with kind of little fanfare, started to gain a little bit of footing. They did Tag World 03 and the Invaders shows, which kind of got a little bit of momentum. Then there was a long pause. They came back in 2004 trying to find their footing, ended up, gaining a little bit of steam at the end of 2004 with the Cibernetico show, which I've talked about. And then it was Tag World Grand Prix in 2005 that really, for a lot of fans, was their first proper exposure to CHIKARA. It was such an amazing weekend. They ended up expanding it, to 32 teams when it was originally supposed to be 16. They brought in wrestlers from all over the world, all of the top independent promotions across the US and Canada, wrestlers from Japan, wrestlers from Mexico, wrestlers from everywhere. And it was such a great and fun weekend. And it ended with a really incredible angle that saw Chris Hero turn on Mike Quackenbush, dissolve the Super Friends tag team, and essentially form the Kings of Wrestling with Claudio and Arik. So you leave Tag World Grand Prix with all of this hype. But that was a very uncommon show for CHIKARA at the time. CHIKARA would end up being known for, these big all-star weekends, if you will, of bringing in all of this talent from all over the world. But at the time, that's not what they were known for. So this show, Remain in Light, was really the first regular CHIKARA show after Tag World, and it was an incredibly important show to see how they would take that momentum and all of those extra eyeballs that they got at Tag World and how they would continue with that momentum and try to ride it through into CHIKARA now becoming one of the more premier independent promotions in the United States. And this was the main event, and I remember when this match happened, a bunch of fans that saw it live. I remember specifically Barmark, who, was one of the bigger, internet wrestling fans of the Northeast independent scene at the time, coming home on the CZW fans message board and raving about this match and saying it was absolutely great. This Kings of Wrestling unit is going to be something to watch out for, going forward, and that everybody should check this match out. I ended up orchestrating a bulk buy through SmartMark Video. If you have no idea what a bulk buy was, basically these were things we used to do back in the tape trading days, where a whole bunch of people would collectively get together, all purchase an event or two from a website. They would all get shipped to one person. That person would duplicate all of those VHS tapes, which was a lot of time and effort, and then end up shipping all of the duplicates plus the one, master tape that individual paid for to them. So it was basically a way to get a lot of wrestling on the cheap, but still supporting the wrestling organizations by placing this big order through an authorized retailer. So I did a bulk buy on SmartMark Video, and this was the show that I picked for my tape at the time. Yes, I had this show on VHS, even though it was 2005. VHSs were on the way out, but they were still kicking around a little bit. I would eventually upgrade it to a copy of, on DVD, but it was a VHS tape at the time. And I remember being so excited. This show, was really good. It had a really good opener between Hallowicked and Delirious, years before they would become Incoherence. It had, the first match in the Fist Men at Work rivalry that would lead to the heel turn of Fist and them joining the Kings of Wrestling. They went to a 15-minute draw in a really fun match. And it had this main event, which just completely blew me away. I think it is one of the best structured of the Kings of Wrestling multi-man matches that we would see over the next several years in CHIKARA. It just also so happened to be the first, but it just hooked me. And I knew that I was watching something special. And I knew that if CHIKARA presented this Kings of Wrestling unit in the way that they would ultimately end up doing, that we were going to be in for a really, really good ride with that promotion. This match, the baby faces come out. They are full of fire, piss and vinegar. They want to beat up the heels. They rush the ring. There's all of these great, almost comedic, over the top, miscommunication spots from all of the Rudos. That's really good and just feels like an authentic kind of lucha libre trios match, which I really appreciate it. We get big dives. Jigsaw hits a big dive to the floor, and Sabian gets a big Hurricane Rana to the floor, and Quack flies over the ropes with a tope con hilo. But while Hero's lying on the ground, which, yes, I know, CHIKARA used the pony ring, right, that lower apron to work in all of the buildings that they would wrestle in with low ceilings, like the Riverside and Reading where this match took place, but still just wild to see that spot. It was really, really cool. But eventually this match is all about the heat. And, I've had several of these trios and Atomicos matches, throughout the past couple videos, where I've talked about, the Kings of Wrestling tags kind of following the same formula a lot, where you get this hot start with the baby faces, being houses of fire, and then it slows down into this extended heat sequence. And this one is so good. Sabian, in hindsight, Sabian being in CHIKARA, being part of this early group fighting the Kings of Wrestling, but ultimately feels a little weird now. Like he'd be more well known for Blackout and his run in CZW. But, here he was, just undersized babyface teaming up with Quack and friends. And he gets brutalized in this match. He eats the giant swing into the drop kick, and the Kings are so great with all of the Kai and Tai deluxe poses and everything like that, really showing all of that lucharesu, if you want to call it that, influence that, all of these guys have and brought to this match. He gets put in a swinging full Nelson from Claudio. It's just spun so many times in this match. Hero is an amazing prick with the disrespectful back chops, and Sabian is so good trying to fight from underneath. And something that I always really loved about these matches when Quack was involved with them, but not in the ring. He was so vocal at ringside, encouraging his partners and telling them to roll out to the floor and take advantage of these lucha tags. And it just adds so much to the overall package of the match, and a really underrated part about what made me love these matches so much, especially if you were there live in the crowd. It's infectious, hearing this dude at ringside, doing exactly what I would be doing if I was in this match and trying to rally, my partners. Whereas, so often we see in independent wrestling, especially, guys just, sitting on the apron doing nothing, waiting for their spots. But Quack knew his place at every moment of every match, it seemed, and knew what he had to bring to the table to increase the overall value of the match itself. And he does such a great job with that here. Sabian finally, gets some momentum. He gets a counter off the top and hits what I guess is basically supposed to be a 450 into a double stomp, so a 350 double or 360 double stomp. Gets the hot tag to Quack, who comes in, House of Fire, hits the windmill overhand chops on Hero, which is so good. We get the heels with these glimmers of hope with comebacks. We get, the first that I can remember, Swiss Death, where Claudio Castagnoli just tosses Jigsaw up and blasts him with that European uppercut. His only Jigsaw can take that move and get the hang time that he does. Sabian gets swung around again with a swinging cravat, this time from Hero. They tease that we're going to go into another extended heat sequence, but Sabian's able to counter a powerbomb attempt into a snapper on it and get to the floor. Jig and Quack are so good. They hit all of these intricate, fancy Hurricane Ranas, and they do this amazing spot that I don't remember ever seeing again, after this match, and I could be wrong, but it's basically like a triple team curb stomp where Jig and Sabian kind of take all three members of the Kings of Wrestling and hold them in like surfboards, and Quack kind of comes over the top with like a double stomp that, curb stomps all three of them into the mat. It was super, super, super cool. It's a spot that, lives in my mind rent-free, to borrow a term, and it's whenever I think of this Remain in Light match, I think of that spot. In our end, it's, all about, poor Jigsaw, getting pulverized and kind of being, I don't want to say the weak link on his team, but, the one that cost his team the fall. Sabian gets gorilla pressed onto Quack at ringside. Jig gets knocked out with the Glimmering Warlock Ricola Bomb combo, gets locked in the Hangman's Clutch for Hero and passes out and gets TKO'd. And that's, as I would mention, that would kind of happen repeatedly to him leading in, for the first 2 months of this period, leading into that Anniversario Orange main event where he would end up surviving that, with Quack's help and come back and get the win against Eric Cannon. So that did get played off later. After the match, we get a heels beatdown. All of the faces come out from the back and clear it out, and that really sets the tone for the rest of the year and what would ultimately be, the next couple of years for CHIKARA. I love this match so much. If you watch it now in a vacuum, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it, but it might not have the same impact to you now that it did to me at the time. And it's one of those just nostalgic matches that I can go back to over and over and over again. You have 6 wrestlers play their parts to absolute perfection and show that, yes, we had our all-star weekend with Tag World Grand Prix, but CHIKARA is here to stay and deliver, absolute quality wrestling time and time again, as it would for the rest of its, life that it lasted for. You can watch this match, of course, on independentwrestling.tv. Subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50. And please join me again next time as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.